Howdy, folks. Ever fantasized about living in the Wild West, galloping under the vast sky like a true cowboy? Well, brace yourselves because frontier life wasn't just about saloon brawls and cowboy heroics. Hollywood loves to glamorize history, often skipping over the gritty realities. Today we're riding out to reveal the raw, unvarnished truth about the real Wild West. Let's talk about hygiene, or the lack thereof. In the Wild West, water was scarcer than a kind word in a gunfight. Finding enough to drink was the priority, leaving little for bathing. Imagine going weeks, maybe even a month, without a proper scrub. That bath, when it finally arrived, involved a freezing cold river and a bar of lye soap that could strip paint off a wagon wheel. That was the height of luxury for most folks on the frontier. You and I, we take daily showers for granted. Deodorant, shampoo, soap, they're all readily available. But back then, those luxuries were unheard of. The result? The air was thick with the aroma of sweat, dust, and grime. Lice and fleas were practically family members, setting up shop in hair and clothes. Skin infections, parasites, they were just part of life. Now, I'm as big a fan of a good chuckwagon cookout as the next person, but the reality of food in the Wild West was enough to turn your stomach. Without refrigeration, keeping food fresh was a constant battle against nature. Salt, smoke, and a prayer. That was the extent of their food preservation methods. Meat, a staple in their diet, often went bad, but that didn't mean it went to waste. Eating spoiled food was a risk they often had to take, and it wasn't always a gamble they won. Rivers and streams, often the only water sources for miles, were contaminated with animal waste and who knows what else. Typhoid, cholera, these weren't just scary words, they were a constant threat. So, next time you're staring down a plate of leftovers, maybe think twice before you scrape them into the trash. Ah, the saloon. The heart of frontier life, right? A place for cowboys to unwind after a long day, swap stories, and enjoy a friendly game of cards. Well, that's what the movies show, at least. The truth is, saloons were rough and tumble places, and the drinks were just as wild as the patrons. Forget your fancy craft cocktails and microbrews, this was whiskey territory. And not the good stuff either. We're talking about whiskey often laced with kerosene, tobacco juice, or even worse. Things you wouldn't want to know were swimming in your glass. A night at the saloon wasn't about relaxation, it was about survival. Let's talk about something we all love to hate, going to the dentist. Now I know even thinking about a trip to the dentist makes some folks break out in a cold sweat, but trust me, it could be a whole lot worse. Imagine a toothache in the Wild West. No painkillers, no fancy dental chairs, no Netflix playing overhead to distract you. Just you, a shot of whiskey, if you were lucky, and a whole lot of pain. Dentists, or rather folks who pretended to be dentists, roamed from town to town offering their services with tools that looked more at home in a blacksmith shop than a doctor's office. Extractions were the name of the game, and they were about as subtle as a kick in the teeth. Tattoos. Today they're a form of self-expression, a way to tell your story without saying a word. But in the Wild West, tattoos were less about art and more about survival. Forget sterile needles and single-use ink. Tattoos were inked using whatever sharp objects they could find, and the ink? Let's just say it wasn't FDA approved. Charcoal, gunpowder, even plant sap. If it could leave a mark, it was fair game. Infection was a constant risk, and tetanus, a potentially deadly bacterial infection, was a very real concern. Tattoos were a way to identify sailors lost at sea, or to mark someone as belonging to a certain group or gang. So next time you're admiring someone's intricate tattoo, take a moment to appreciate how far the art has come. We all need a place to hang our hats, a place to call home. But in the Wild West, home was a loose term. Sod houses, dugouts, tents. These were the common dwellings for those brave enough to settle the frontier. Forget noisy neighbors or messy house guests. These folks shared their cramped quarters with critters of all shapes and sizes. Rats, fleas, lice, cockroaches, they were practically part of the family. Privacy was a luxury few could afford, and comfort was a distant dream. Imagine huddling around a smoky fire in the winter, trying to stay warm while the wind howled outside, or trying to sleep through the sweltering summer heat without even a fan to circulate the air. Let's talk about something we all do, but rarely discuss, going to the bathroom. In our modern world, we have the luxury of flushing toilets, air fresheners, and hand sanitizer galore, but in the Wild West, sanitation was, shall we say, a bit more rustic. Forget your porcelain thrones and scented candles. The height of luxury was a chamber pot, basically a fancy bucket that lived under the bed or in the corner. And when it was full, well, you didn't hire a plumber, that's for sure. The contents of those chamber pots often ended up in the streets, adding to the already fragrant aroma of the Wild West. Disease spread like wildfire, and it's no wonder. Water, it's the elixir of life, essential for our survival. But in the Wild West, finding clean drinking water was like striking gold, rare and precious. Rivers and streams, often the only water sources for miles, were often contaminated with animal waste, runoff from mining operations, and who knows what else. Boiling water would have killed off some of the harmful bacteria, but fuel for fires was precious, and often needed for cooking and warmth. So people drank straight from the source, hoping for the best, but often bracing for the worst. Dysentery, cholera, typhoid, these waterborne illnesses were rampant, spreading through communities like wildfire. We all get sick from time to time, it's part of life. But in the Wild West, getting sick could be a death sentence. Doctors, often poorly trained and ill-equipped, roamed from town to town offering their services with more hope than actual medical knowledge. Bloodletting, a practice where they drained blood from the body, was a popular cure for just about everything. The problem was, it often weakened patients, making their conditions even worse. Mercury, a toxic heavy metal, was a common ingredient in many medicines. It's enough to make you appreciate modern medicine, isn't it? Let's be honest, folks, the Wild West was downright filthy. The combination of limited water, lack of sanitation, and the harsh realities of frontier life created an environment where cleanliness was a luxury few could afford. Streets were choked with dust, manure, and whatever else people tossed aside. Homes, whether they were sod houses or rough-hewn cabins, were often dusty, cramped, and home to a whole host of critters. Bathing was a rare treat, laundry was even rarer, and personal hygiene wasn't exactly a top priority. People wore the same clothes for days, weeks, even months on end, and the smell alone must have been something to behold. But here's the thing about the Wild West, it was a time of incredible resilience. Life on the frontier was harsh, unforgiving, and downright dirty. But it's a testament to the grit and resilience of those who lived there. They didn't have it easy, not by a long shot. They carved out a life in a challenging and untamed land, building the foundation for the stories we romanticize today. So next time you watch a Western, picture the real Wild West. Take a moment to appreciate their struggle, and maybe thank your lucky stars for running water and modern medicine. Thanks for riding along, partners. Until next time, happy trails.